Twilight Registry. Case file TR-277. Subject: Greyhollow Township, Manitoc County, Wisconsin. Incident classification: Pattern Mortality Anomaly. Founding origin: Primary witness: Dr. Adelle Marsh, County Coroner, Manitoc County, 11 years in post. We begin with the record. The Manitoc County founding archives are held in the basement of the county clerk's office in a humidity-controlled room that was added during a 2009 renovation. Most of the material is unremarkable: land surveys, deed transfers, census fragments, correspondence between early county administrators and the territorial government. The collection is organized, accessible, and has been reviewed by historians on at least 2 occasions without incident. One document has no date. It sits in a folder labeled MISCELLANEOUS, Origin Documents, in a box numbered 14 of 41. The folder also contains an 1847 letter about road construction and a partial plat map with no county name. The undated document is handwritten on paper that lab analysis places within the founding era, 1843 to 1851. But it is not a deed, a letter, or a census entry. It is a record of a death. The document is written in a clinical hand, surprisingly so for the era. It describes a body, male, approximate age, physical description. The cause of death listed is not a disease or an accident. It is a wound, described in terms that suggest the writer had medical training, or, at minimum, had observed anatomy in detail. The wound is specific: a narrow, bilateral puncture pattern in the soft tissue of the upper thorax, described as not consistent with any implement available to this settlement, and of apparent depth exceeding the anatomical distance between entry point and the posterior cavity. Translation: whatever made the wound went all the way through, deeper than it had room to go. The document ends with a single sentence: "This is how it was here when we arrived." Dr. Adelle Marsh found this document in March of the year prior to her contact with the Twilight Registry. She found it not because she was researching local history, but because she was looking for something specific, something she had begun to suspect and could not explain, and could not stop thinking about. She had been conducting routine autopsy work on a traffic fatality when she noticed something in the wound documentation. A pattern. A specific bilateral puncture in the soft tissue of the upper thorax. Small, clean-edged, present in a case where it had no business being present. A vehicle collision. No penetrating objects involved. No obvious source. She wrote it off. She documented it. She noted the anomaly. She signed the certificate. 4 months later, she saw it again. A drowning. Elderly resident recovered from the lake, consistent with drowning in all respects, except for the wound pattern. Present, clean, identical geometry to the entry in the traffic fatality case. Bilateral, upper thorax, deep. She went back through her records. 11 years of cases. She reviewed all of them. She found the wound pattern in 31 deaths, spanning causes of death, ranging from cardiac events to farm accidents to a house fire. 31 cases across 11 years in which a small bilateral wound in the upper thorax was present and unexplained. And she confirmed this in retrospect, documented, and then filed away and quietly not thought about again. By her, and by the medical examiners who preceded her, whose records she accessed with the county's permission, she found it in records going back 70 years. Then she went to the founding archives. She found the undated document. She said, "I stood in that basement room for a long time. I'm not someone who panics. You can't do this job and panic. But I want to be precise about what I felt. I felt the floor was unsteady. Not because anything had changed, the floor was fine, but because something I had understood about the world, about time, about cause and effect, had shifted under me, the way a foundation shifts before a collapse." She photographed the document. She returned to her office. She began cross-referencing what she found. The wound geometry in the founding-era document is, when adjusted for the observer's descriptive language and the absence of standardized anatomical terminology, a match to the wound pattern in all 31 modern cases. Same entry angle, same bilateral symmetry, same depth anomaly, the same wound. For 170 years, in bodies that died of completely unrelated causes. She brought this to the Twilight Registry in October. The registry's review added the following: "We examined the founding document's description against wound documentation from the county's full recorded history, including records held at the state archives in Madison that had not been accessed since their original deposit. We found the pattern in records from 1887, 1903, 1911, 1928, 1934, 1947, and continuously thereafter. We found it in the death record of the town's second recorded coroner, who died in 1902 of reported heart failure. His autopsy notes, written by a colleague, mention the wound pattern explicitly, describe it as a pre-existing marking of unknown origin, and recommend no further investigation." That recommendation, no further investigation, appears in 6 other records across the decades, written by different people, in different handwriting, worded differently each time, but arriving at the same conclusion. We do not know whether these individuals made the recommendation because they were afraid, because they had been told to, or because something in the nature of the wound discouraged inquiry on a level that bypassed conscious decision. Dr. Marsh has a theory about the founding document's final sentence. This is how it was here when we arrived. She believes the sentence does not describe a death that occurred during the settlement of Greyhollow. She believes it describes a condition, something already present in the land, or in a specific location within what would become the town limits. The settlers found it. They documented one instance of it. They named it in the way that founding communities named things, not with explanation, but with the flatness of people who have accepted a fact about a place that they cannot explain and intend to live with anyway. She said, "You have to understand, in 1843, 1847, people did not leave a place because it was frightening. They had walked enormous distances to get there. They had nothing to return to. If something in that valley did something to one of their people on the way in, and they couldn't explain it, and they couldn't fight it, they would write it down and keep moving. They would build on top of it. Because what else could they do?" The registry asked, "Do you believe the wound is being inflicted on the living, before or after their documented deaths?" She said, "I've looked at this every way I know how. The wound is present in every case. The wound is always consistent with the founding description. What I cannot tell you, what the forensic record genuinely cannot tell me, is when it was inflicted. In cases involving significant tissue damage from the cause of death, the wound's timing is unrecoverable. In cases with better preservation, the drowning, one of the cardiac events, the tissue around the wound entries suggests it was inflicted within hours of death. Perimortem. It's not post-mortem scavenging. It's not a medical procedure. It is a wound that appears in the hours surrounding death. And it has appeared in every death in Greyhollow Township for as long as the records go back." She was asked, "Do you think it is choosing them?" She said, "I think it is present in the place. I think it has been present since before the town existed. I think whatever it is, whatever makes that wound, does not travel. It does not seek. It waits. And I think Greyhollow was built on top of it. And it has been doing what it does to every person who dies within its range for 170 years. And everyone who ever noticed it wrote it down and then decided not to pursue it. And I understand why they made that decision. I am not certain I will make a different one." She was asked, "Are you planning to report this to county health authorities?" She paused for a long time. She said, "I'm going to ask you something. The registry. How many cases do you have on file from towns with founding documents that mention a first death? Towns that were built over something that was already there?" The registry's answer, in the interest of complete documentation, is 41. She said, "And in how many of those cases did reporting to official authorities result in any change to the underlying condition?" The registry's answer, 0. She said, "Then I'm going to keep documenting, and I'm going to keep the founding document where I can look at it. And I'm going to think about what it means that someone in 1843 wrote that sentence. This is how it was here when we arrived, and thought it was enough." The registry notes, Greyhollow Township has a current population of 3,400. Dr. Adelle Marsh remains in her post. She has not reported the pattern to county health authorities. She has, however, begun mapping the death locations against the town's property surveys, attempting to identify a geographic epicenter for the wound distribution. We are not sharing those maps at this time. We are sharing the registry's determination. In 41 documented founding wound towns, the wound does not escalate, accelerate, or change pattern over time. It simply continues. It is as consistent and unvarying as a geological feature, as a river, as bedrock. The founding document's final sentence, repeated here for the record. This is how it was here when we arrived. This is the registry's documentation. The wound exists. The town exists. The records are complete. What existed before the town is not documented because it preceded the record. It does not need to be documented. It is still fair. Case file TR2277. Status: unresolved and escalating. End of file.